Precisely 1:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News edited by Ramesh Piris and read by Sharifa Tahir. Headlines. The President calls on Chief Prelates of Askaria Malvat chapters. The vaccination drive for children between 12 to 15 years will kick off tomorrow. Sri Lanka sees 550 new COVID cases and 10 more deaths. The circular to remove teacher and principal salary anomaly issued on the circular extending the retirement age to be issued today. The former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says projects carried out in the country have been acknowledged by the IMF. A 16-hour water card for parts of the Colombo district. In international stories, the EU's top diplomat vows EU's full support for Ukraine on frontline visit. Sports, tennis. Australia denies entry to Novak Djokovic. We move on to local news in detail. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa called on the Mahanayaka and Anunayaka theories of the Malvatta chapters today and received their blessings. He visited the Malvatta Mahavihara and called on the Most Venerable Timbul Kumbare Sri Vimaladhamma Anunayaka Thera to seek his blessings. The Anunayaka Thera bestowed his blessings on the President and wished success in his endeavours to uplift the living standards of the people as well as the economy despite challenges. The President also called on the Most Venerable Nyangoda Vijita Siri Thera and received his blessings. The number of COVID-19 cases confirmed in the country has risen to 589,479 following the detection of 550 patients yesterday. 548 cases were linked to the newer COVID-19 cluster, while 2 persons who arrived in the country recently from overseas also tested positive for the virus yesterday. The epidemiology unit of the Ministry of Health said 13,002 persons are currently receiving treatment for coronavirus at several facilities across the country. Yesterday, 141 persons who recovered from COVID-19 were discharged from hospitals, raising the number of recoveries in the country to 561,412. Meanwhile, yesterday, another 10 coronavirus-related fatalities were confirmed in Sri Lanka, raising the death toll to 15,065. The Ministry of Public Services, Provincial Councils and Local Government says the circular extending the retirement age of public sector workers up to 65 years will be issued today. Accordingly, the Secretary to the Ministry, J.J. Ratnasiri, stated that the retirement age of public sector workers and of those serving in the armed forces will be extended to 65 years. This circular will be issued in accordance with the 2022 budget proposal. Meanwhile, the circular to eliminate the teacher-principal salary anomaly was issued on Wednesday by the Ministry of Public Services and Provincial Councils and Local Government. The circular was issued in accordance with the decisions taken at the Cabinet meetings held on August 30th, 2021 and January 3rd, 2022 regarding the elimination of teacher-principal salary anomalies. The relevant circular was issued with the approval of the National Salaries and Remuneration Commission and the Ministry of Finance with effect from the 1st of January this year. The former minister and the leader of the United National Party, Ranil Wickremesinghe, says some of the projects carried out in the country have been acknowledged by the International Monetary Fund. He made this comment participating in the Dasadasin program this morning conducted by the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Elaborating further, he said programs such as distributing free books to school children, improving the infrastructure facilities of schools are some of the programs that has been recognized by the global financial institution. Commenting further, Mr. Wickremesinghe said the former President Maithripala Sirisena's recent critical comments on the present political trend is to be expected, being the same coalition that governs the country, and if he were to represent himself as an independent candidate, he would be insulting himself. Sri Lanka police have carried out a special operation yesterday to inspect motorcycles and three-wheelers travelling in the Western Province. 1,076 traffic police officers were part of the operation. 4,288 motorcycles and 3,632 three-wheelers were accordingly inspected during the operation. Police said of the 10,463 persons travelling in the motorcycles and three-wheelers, 2,112 were issued warnings and advice after they were found to be in violation of health guidelines. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation giving you the news.
Sri Lanka Insurance Motor Plus, the best option.
Continuing with more stories here at home, the Department of Excise says steps will be taken to paste a safety sticker on all liquor bottles and cans in the country by the 1st of April. The Excise Department had already commenced operations in this regard under several stages. The Excise Department has established a safety seal management system to paste or apply the safety seal on all imported and locally produced liquor bottles and cans sold in Sri Lanka. Legal provisions granted a 3-month grace period to paste the sticker on all liquor bottles and cans in the market from the 1st of January. The main aim of the program is to ensure the government is able to collect taxes imposed on liquor without any discrepancies and to prevent illicit products from entering the market. Sri Lanka is negotiating with a Dubai-based company which has offered $100 million for the Queen of Asia, the world's largest natural corundum blue sapphire found in Sri Lanka, whether to make final deal. State Minister Lohan Ratwata, who is currently in Dubai, said that no final decision was taken in the company's offer to sell the Queen of Asia. He said the officials and the owner of the blue sapphire are still at the discussion stage with the company for the highest offer, more than $100 million. The Golf Ace Green parking area has been reopened to the public from Wednesday. Police spokesman, Senior Superintendent of Police Nihal Talduwa said that the parking slots were closed as a precaution during the pandemic. The police spokesman said that various claims were made over the decision to close the Golf Ace Green parking area. However, he insisted that most claims were false and baseless. That's local news for the moment.
In 200 meters, turn left.
This is not just my daily commute. I drive to power my nation's future.
Sri Lanka Insurance Motor Plus introduces specialized motor insurance for you who drive our nation forward. Choose tailor-made insurance solutions, up to 75,000 rupees claim settlements within 3 working hours, exclusive discounts through Motor Plus loyalty rewards, easy and 0% interest payment plans.
Only from Sri Lanka Insurance.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Veda Mahatmya.
Another main news story, the vaccination drive for Sri Lanka between 12 and 15 years will kick off from tomorrow. The Health Minister Keheliya Rambukwala invited parents to send their children to get the vaccine as there was no reason to be scared of receiving the vaccine. They will be vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine and the vaccination drive is to be carried out at all hospitals and MOH offices. The vaccination drive for healthy children in the age group from 16 to 19 commenced last October.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Veda Mahatmya.
And on Watchlight, the National Water Supply and Water Board stated that a 16-hour water cut will be imposed on Saturday, the 8th January, in several areas in Colombo. Accordingly, the water cut will be imposed from 8 a.m. to 12 midnight. The water supply to the Hivela, Mount Lavinia, Kotte and Karuwala Municipal Council areas, Maharagama, Borelaskamo, Kolanava and Kotikawata Muleriava will be disrupted.
Coming up, World News.
World News headlines. The EU's top diplomat vows EU's full support for Ukraine on frontline visit. The state media KNCA reports North Korea successfully tested a hypersonic missile. Chile's Constitutional Assembly elects new president. We move on to world news in detail. The European Union's top diplomat has visited the front line of Ukraine's war with Moscow-backed forces promising massive consequences for Russia if it launched a new military offensive against its neighbor. Joseph Borrell flew by helicopter in the easterly Luhansk region, the first EU High Representative to do so since the outbreak of the conflict in 2014, as part of a Western diplomatic push in support of Ukraine. He added the EU has a firm stance and a strong commitment that any military aggression against Ukraine will have massive consequences and severe costs. North Korea successfully tested a hypersonic missile on Wednesday, its first major weapons test this year. The state news agency KCNA said it precisely hit a set target 700 kilometers away. This is the second reported test of a hypersonic missile which can avoid detection for longer than ballistic missiles. The test comes as its leader, Kim Jong-un, had earlier vowed to bolster Pyongyang's defenses. Pyongyang joins a small number of countries, including the United States and China, in attempting to develop this weapon. Finally, on world news, the Chilean Assembly, tasked with drafting a new constitution in the South American nation, has elected a new president. After 9 rounds of voting on Tuesday and Wednesday, members of the Constitutional Assembly chose epidemiologist Maria Elisa Quinteros to replace the body's inaugural president, indigenous Mapuche professor and activist Elisa Loncon. The change was provided for it in the text of the 155-member body, which was elected last year to draft the text to replace Chile's previous Magna Carta, produced during the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. And that's world news.
Development News is brought to you by Let's take all out of the coconut tree and make the island thriving and prosperous. Call our hotline 1928. WhatsApp 070 400 1928.
And on development news, aiming to give a push to value addition in the coconut sector, the government will set up a specialized export processing zone dedicated to coconut-related industries in Hambantota, one of the key areas in the southern coconut triangle. This triangle will consist of Ambalipitia, Hambantota and Monoragala under a massive coconut cultivation drive where the Coconut Industrial EPZ gets high priority. The modalities in the setting up of this new zone are now being worked out in consultations with the relevant agencies, including the Board of Investment, with the expectation to attract $1 billion investment to the 400-acre zone.
Development News was brought to you by the coconut tree is well grown in almost all the parts of the island. It is an exceptional source of extra income. The shell, the husk and almost all the parts of the coconut tree makes you money, providing you with an excellent extra source of income. It will also help to nourish the economy of the country. You will be guided with all necessary informations regarding the coconut cultivation, with the novel cultivation techniques and all other related and upgraded informations by the Coconut Research Institute, Lunavilla. Call our hotline 1928. WhatsApp 070 400 1928.
And on sports news, tennis. Australia has cancelled Novak Djokovic's visa and denied the men's number 1 tennis player entry, the country's board agency announced on Thursday, saying the sportsman failing to provide appropriate evidence to meet entry requirements. Djokovic, who is from Serbia, earlier said he had obtained a medical exemption from COVID-19 vaccination in order to play in the upcoming Australian Open tournament. Meanwhile, in cricket stories, the national cricket team is scheduled to tour Australia, India and Bangladesh this year. According to the Future Tours program, the national team will commence this year's international cricketing calendar with a one-day international series against Zimbabwe at home this month. Sri Lanka will then leave for Australia later this month to play 5 2020 internationals. Sri Lanka Cricket said the men's team will tour India in February and March, and then in May will leave for Bangladesh. That's sports news.
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Business news. The Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, acting in terms of the regulations made under the Registered Stock and Securities Ordinance and the Local Treasury Bills Ordinance, has decided to extend the suspension of perpetual treasuries remitted from carrying on the business and activities of a primary dealer for a further period of 6 months with effect from 4:30 p.m. on 5th January 2022 in order to continue the investigations being conducted by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
Business News, sponsored by
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. Will you be the lucky winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee? 50 gold sovereigns for the top prize winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee. Scooters for the 10 second prize winners. iPhones for the 10 third prize winners. Mountain bikes for the 29 fourth prize winners. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB You Trust.
On economic news, the governor of the central bank, Ajit Nivadkar, says Sri Lanka's earmarked $500 million to repay a maturing sovereign bond on January 18, 2022. He said Sri Lanka's bond investors who had sold earlier would lose out due to organized negative stories spread by certain vested interests. He added that out of $500 million bond, $170 million is held by domestic investors. That's on economic news.
The Weather Report.
Another weather update. The Meteorological Department forecasts several spells of showers to occur in the northern, north-central, eastern and Nuvu provinces and in Mathal and Urili districts. Showers of thunder showers may occur at several places in the southern province and in Ratnapura and Kalutara districts during the evening or night. And that's news in brief. You're listening. That's the main news for you. Before we move on to the programs and before we wind up the main news bulletin, we proceed to the headlines again. The President calls on Chief Prelates of Askiri and Malvatta chapters. The vaccination drive for children between 12 to 15 years will kick off from tomorrow. Sri Lanka sees 550 new COVID cases and 10 more deaths. Circular to remove teacher and principal salary anomaly issued and the circular extending the retirement age to be issued today. The former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says projects carried out in the country have been acknowledged by the IMF. A 16-hour water cut for parts of the Colombo district. On international stories, the EU's top diplomat vows EU's full support for Ukraine on frontline visits. Sports tennis, Australia denies entry to Novak Djokovic. And with that, we conclude the afternoon bulletin of news. Stay tuned into Radio Sri Lanka.